Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we're back here on Sunday Night AstroLive for another edition of the. I don't know if it's the only Sunday Night Astrology show. I'm sure there are others. I would not be that vain to believe that there aren't other astrology shows. But do astrology shows have cats like this on Sunday night? Rosie seems to be here a little bit more for Sunday night sometimes than Jasper. Although we might have a Jasper sighting. We're apparently there is work going on right now for a Jasper image that hopefully we'll be able to put on a mug, on a coffee mug, and you'll be able to get a Jasper the Astro Cat coffee mug. The Jasper coin has been put into, I think, abeyance for a while, but who knows? We might be able to fire that back up again. Anyway, welcome to tonight's show. I've got a lot of content tonight, so I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of content with you. It's funny because I never know what I'm going to do for one of these live streams. I just don't. Like sometimes during the week I'll have an idea and I'll go, okay, this is kind of what I want to work on, and then as the week goes on, I maybe add to it in my head or spend a little more time with it, or something else comes up and that becomes part of it. So I don't always know what I'm going to. Sometimes I do. Sometimes it's like, oh, I really want to do this. And of course, things are newsworthy, and it's not like I'm trying to chase, the ratings here. But sometimes we have to get into that because some of my more popular shows, numbers wise, tend to be things that are topical, like looking at Joe Rogan's chart or looking at Vladimir Putin and the robot chart. So those kinds of charts tend to get eyeballs, and they're also kind of interesting because we get to look at somebody's chart and go, oh yeah, well that works and that fits and that works and that fits, and it all kind of comes together. So tonight is no exception, and the semi shameless, slightly self-promotional celebrity chart that we're going to be looking at tonight. I wouldn't say it's promotional, but let's say semi-shameless. It's Jen Psaki. We're going to look at Jen Psaki's chart. I don't have a birth time for her. She's really short. Like I looked at her in pictures. She's a midget. Like Jen Psaki is maybe 5'3", if she's lucky. 5'3" if she's lucky. Now, anything worse than a short man who's a tyrant is a short woman who's a tyrant. Now you're into, like, look how small Nancy Pelosi is. What is she, about maybe 5'3"? Her and Jen Psaki, I'm sure they see eye to eye on a number of different things, literally and figuratively, right? So, yeah, she's tiny. That said, she's got like a super stellium in Sagittarius. So I will say one thing about Jen Psaki: do not underestimate her. She has a pretty interesting chart. She also has a chart that does not have a whole lot of empathy. And so don't underestimate Jen Psaki. She's got a pretty rock solid, full on Sagittarian chart. But for such a Sagittarius, she's, a fucking liar. And that's one of the things that Sagittarius theoretically can't do, is they theoretically can't lie. But Jen Psaki has no problem with it. Now, it might have to do with the fact that she's got a Sun, Mercury, and Neptune conjunction, which makes all those things like fact and fantasy and truth and fiction all kind of blur together. That could be part of it, I'm sure. But the other thing is that Sagittarius tends to be really ideological. Like, it is a sign that is connected to systems. And there's, if you haven't seen it, there's a picture of her. In fact, I have it on her chart of her wearing a pink Russian fuzzy hat with a Kremlin star in the center. And she, I think Jen is, I know she's been to Ukraine. We've seen pictures with her, and John Kerry was there. And I think they were talking with, I don't know if it was Zelensky, maybe what's his name, Poroshenko. I think she was there. She was part of this group, and they were negotiating. So she's been to Ukraine, or the Ukraine, or a Ukraine, or however we're pronouncing Ukraine these days. So anyway, we're going to look at her chart tonight. And for Sagittarius, she's a really short person. Usually Sagittarians are pretty tall people. And I was trying to rectify her chart a little bit. So first I was playing with it and I said, well, she has Mars in Sagittarius too, right? So I thought, well, let's put Mars on her ascendant or close to her ascendant, because she might be, well, she is a little confrontational. She has to deal with confrontational energy. But usually when you have Sagittarius on the ascendant, people tend to be tall. I mean, it's a kind of a given. They tend to be tall. And then I looked at her picture. I'm like, that is not a tall person. That is a very short person. So let's take unless she's what do you call them? A mini pony. She might be a mini pony. I don't know. But no, she's not. I don't think she's a Sag rising. So I have her right at the end of Aquarius rising, and with Pisces in the first, like around 29 degrees, because it puts her Sun, Mercury, Neptune up in the 10th house. It's kind of close to that 12 noon time. I like to use either, if I don't have a birth time for somebody, sometimes I'll play around with it, try and rectify it, or I'll use the sunrise time, or I'll use the high noon time. So anyway, so we're going to look at her. That is the shameless, let's get eyeballs on the video. I may even have to rename the title of the video. It's a little too, I don't know. Maybe it's a little too cryptic. That's the word. It's a little too cryptic. Anyway, we are going to talk about astrology in the Aquarian age. And I would say that's astrology in a post-COVID era. And I know that there's a really good chance that, we may have another little space bug or whatever coming back into our lives at some point in time, if the powers that be deem that we are indeed most fortunate to have another space bug in our presence, and therefore they can roll out their digital identification and all the other things that they have merrily planned out for us in this age of Aquarius, or one version of it. It could be the dark age of Aquarius. But I mean, we've moved on a little bit now, right? We've gone from plague, and I think if they continue to run this program, what we'll see is probably global famine. If they continue to run this program with Ukraine and Russia and this very strange version of World War III, the war that is a war but isn't a war, right? I mean, we've been in a war prior to this whole Russia thing. I mean, there's been a war going on ever since 9/11, and the war has been on a number of different fronts. There's been a war with the American people. There's been a war on certain indigenous cultures, or cultures that are located in places like North Africa, like Libya or Yemen or Afghanistan. Those are not in Africa, but well, Libya is. And I'm not sure. I think Yemen is pretty close. It's right across the water from Saudi Arabia, right? So Yemen, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, all five of those countries, there's been war. They've been the recipients of war, and there's no other way of describing it. So ever since 9/11, and we had the Project for the New American Century, a clear break. I talked a lot about that last week over on 15 Minutes of Flame. And you can find that over my 15 Minutes of Flame website. And then on the other channel, which is the Friday Forecast, we had a bit of a mix up with our guest who didn't show up. And then it kind of forced me to go into a different direction that I wanted to with the show, but it was actually a good direction because it was something I was talking about, and it has to do with the neocons. And so we were sitting around, we were watching, what's his name? Funny guy with the glasses. Oh man, I'm spacing out now. Funny guy with the glasses. Give me a second here. I'll tell you who it is. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Oh, hold on. Now I'm really having a senior moment because it'll come to me. Emily and I, God, we saw 5 of his shows today. Let's see. Let's go back into format, production, history. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. I'm not even going to go into chat, but I know you know what I'm talking about. He was a member of the Young Turks. Fuck. All right. Young Turks spinoff. Boy, there's a lot of spinoffs from the Young Turks. Holy shit. Holy shit. A lot of spinoffs. I'm just going to go into chat. You guys know what I'm talking about. Let me get in there. Funny guy with the glasses. Who is he? Used to be on the Young Turks. God, I am having. She's 5'5". I'm Shaq. Yeah, man, I tell you, man, she's really, really tiny. Jimmy Dore, my best. So we're watching Jimmy Dore, and he had this episode where he was talking about how the neoliberals and the neocons have merged together, and they have. And so this is one of the things that I talked about on Friday was how the neocons and the neoliberal positions were really superimposed upon the majority of the people in this country. One was a super liberal social Marxist position, and the other was more kind of a Bolshevik, pro-Zionist neocon position, which embraced things like conservatism. You have Ayn Rand, I think, being a kind of the, I think she's kind of the mother in some ways. She's like the alien reptile mother of the neocon movement because of those weird sort of free market libertarian, which borderline are on the borderline of being conservative values. So anyway, that's exactly what Jimmy Dore was talking about, and how this current situation is this synthesis of the neocons and the neoliberals all coming together to have their little war party across the planet. Okay, anyway, Jen Psaki's a part of that. She's definitely part of that. We're gonna get into some of that today, or tonight rather. And then one of the things that I want to do is, again, it was one of those stumble upon moments where I was really looking at this one factor for the United States. I was looking at when the United States chart became a progressed Pisces chart. So I was looking at that. Okay, so when did the United States chart go into progressed Pisces? Because right now it's at 17 degrees Pisces. So I went back and I did the date or the math on it. Then I went in and actually programmed it. It happens to be 2005. So there are 2 events in 2005 that are significant. One, which really reaffirms this new position of Neptune in the United States chart, progress chart. And the other is the discovery of Eris. And this is where Jen Psaki comes into play. Because based on the mythological description of Eris, Jen Psaki is an agent of Eris. That would actually be a good name for a spy group. You have Eris, you have Hydra, Chaos, which one, whatever the one in Bond is. Chaos, I think, was the Man from U.N.C.L.E. Not Man from U.N.C.L.E. Well, yeah, I think it was Chaos and Control. No, that was Don Knotts. No, Don Adams. Don Adams. Chaos and Control. With agents, was it Agent 66? Anyway, what's the one in James Bond? The James Bond evil group. Anyway, Eris should make a good one. It's got 4 letters. You need to have 4 letters for an evil group, for an evil acronym. You need 4 letters. Chaos, Hydra, Haydr. That's 5 letters. 5 letters max. Chaos, Hydra, Eris, and whatever the bond group is. I know it'll come to me. Anyway, so we're going to look at Eris tonight and how we're really living in the age of Eris and the connections between Eris and Discordia, and that we are living in these incredibly discordiant and a very strange kind of journey into the realm of Discordia as it relates to astrology and Eris. So anyway, got a lot to cover tonight, and there's more too. There's more that I have kind of lined up here. A lot more. So why don't we get into it? Let's see who we have in chat. There she is, the lovely and talented Jonas. SL Sully, what's happening? Neo is here. Kate of Utica, or Utica. Hi, Kate. Renee, Susie Gemini. Hello, Susie. Solid behind blue eyes. I like that. Solid behind blue eyes. Dawn Hart. Que pasa, Dawn? There she is. JJ Rain de Blanc. PB, what's happening? Whimsical Farm Girl. There's a man, Thomas Jordan. Kathy Steen checking in from the Dakotas, South Dakota to be precise. There's Thor at the door. Steve, what's going on? Stephanie Martin. We got Steven and Stephanie right after each other. Sometimes that happens. We had a couple of Jones back to back. We had a couple of Jolies back to back. Now we have a Steve and Stephanie. Let's see. Kelly Boyles. Hey, what's going on, Kelly? Misbehaving too. Is Ryan here? Neo had his message retracted. Is the intro? There he is. Ryan, the introspective woodworker, head of the International Introspective Woodworkers Union of the World. That's a mouthful. But if somebody can handle that, it's Ryan. Let's see who else we have here. Sony, what's happening, Sony? Cheryl Losciavo. No one you know. No one you know. I thought she was a robot. She certainly seems like a robot, doesn't she? She did have that missing gap there for a minute. I've never seen the mask on Saki. I've seen the mask on Kamala. I've seen the mask on Pelosi. I've seen the mask on Joe. I've seen the mask on Dirty Joe. I did see Saki have the black eye. She got the black eye. She definitely had that. Let's see who else do we have here. Kelly B, what's going on? Marianne Smith. Marianne Smith is the Grandma Moses of our chat room. Although Grandma Moses was much older than Marianne Smith when she decided to paint. But Marianne Smith is going through a major transition, like a lot of us who have gone through some challenging times with COVID. And she's decided that she's moving away from her work, longtime work as a body worker, and now full-time into being a painter, and actually a very good painter. In fact, I purchased one of her paintings because I thought it was super cool. And I have it here. I have it hanging on my wall. Anyway, let's all wish Marianne a successful transition. And it's always good to be able to support people where we can and when we can. That's one of my things that I like to try to do. So this is a really good moment for me to go into a segue about another member of our community who can use some support. And I'm speaking about our friend, Leon Luis, who has gone through a very challenging time, just like everybody else with COVID. Now, Leon is a musician and a producer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist. He wears a lot of hats, and he's currently living in England right now. And he's trying to get back to Mexico, where he was born and where he has family, and he has an opportunity to really go a lot deeper with his music and look into new ways of monetizing it. He's got a pretty successful backed licensing catalog. Well, what happened is that Leon has a lot of his tracks tied up in licensing for like sporting events. Like they use his background music for sporting events, and whether it's football, like on Fox, or I think he has some contracts with Fox Sports. And because of COVID, they stopped playing. And that meant that his tunes that he had connected to publishing with Fox Sports and a number of other entities that uses music for things like sporting events, they didn't have the sporting events. So he didn't get paid, which is a real bummer, right? So it really, just like everybody else, it threw him into a just a kind of a real sideways path. And right now he's looking at, he's having that I Ching moment of crisis and opportunity, right? Because he's trying to keep his world together, and he's trying to use this as a trampoline to get to the next phase of his life. So he's put together a Give Fund Go, and there's some interesting bells and whistles that go along with it. Now, so first of all, he'll accept any contribution that you're willing to give. Give Fund Go is like that. There's nothing that you have to give him and expect anything in return for. You can give $1, $2, $3. His goal, and I'll tell you in a minute, is to get back to Mexico. He's got a lot of pieces he has to put back together here in order to do that. But there is a unique value proposition that's going along with this. And let me show you what Leon has put together here. I think it's pretty cool. So I just have to dial this thing up. Give me 1 second. I have the NFL game of the week music in my head. Okay, here we go. So it's right here. All right, this is on Give Send Go. This is Leon Luis. If you feel like it, I'm going to put the link inside the show page. But this is really interesting here. He's got an interesting proposition. Again, you can just help him out if you want. So this is Leon Luis. I've been living and working in England for 11 years as a television composer, music publisher, and music licensing agent. Because of the pandemic, my business took a serious hit due to a large portion of my publishing income being linked to living, that means live, sporting events and other productions, many of which were canceled. So he got torpedoed during COVID. So here's his goal. My goal is to raise enough funds to deal with my immediate needs, which includes short-term housing and other modest living expenses, while I make arrangements with the embassies, updating both my Mexican and U.S. passport, which has been close to impossible here in the UK due to COVID nearly shuttering the State Department/embassy. Now that restrictions have been lifted, I have a green light, but this could take up to 6 weeks based on their backlog. I'll be using part of this money to get a plane ticket and set up a new place and studio in Mexico. Fair enough. My goal is to reach $10,000 as quickly as possible for immediate and long-term use of these essential resources. Okay, here's the value add. So if you just want to throw them $5, $10, whatever, you could do that. But if you want to hand out a little bit more, this is what you get. Anybody that donates between $75 to $249 will be thanked in the liner notes and credit for upcoming tracks in any video that will be documenting my journey back to my roots in my home in Mexico, as well as my roots as a musician, composer, singer, songwriter. So he's got to document this, and you'll get credits on there, right? So it's kind of cool. You'll get a credit on some music, you get a credit on some video. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. If you give him $250, you would get a 1% share in a new publishing company that he's starting moving forward for any new projects. And I haven't talked with him, but I think some of that could be transferred into some kind of a cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of different ways that, you can get paid because you'll be a partner with him. So if he gets 10% if he gets some money for a mechanical or a piece of music that he's licensed, you're going to get a little piece of it. So if you give him $500, right, you get a 2% share. It's pretty good. Like, you're going to get a percentage of what Leon does. It's kind of like Bowie bonds. All accounting for any sales and payouts will occur every 6 months, And each new publishing partner will be given a notarized certificate. That's cool, right? Of your partnership and investment. This will be the case for any new publishing endeavors. So if you want to, you can go check out his homepage right here, which is Altar Boy Music. It loads up all of his tracks, all of his publishing. It's already clearance services, our team. So Leon is legit. He's totally legit. And in fact, I'm going to try to get him to basically give me a couple of tracks for this show, because I want to have an intro for this show. And normally I just, get on a GarageBand, but he's a pro. So I'm going to see if I can get like a little track and I'll put some images to it, and we'll have an opener courtesy of Leon Luis. So anyway, if you feel like helping out a member of our community, if you want to just send him a couple of bucks so he can get the wheels in motion here and have the wheels actually lift off and get him to Mexico, that's great. And if you want to go a little bit deeper and you want to play around with a whole new economic model and be a partner with Leon and his new publishing company, get a percentage, it's right there. Simple, real simple. It'd be kind of cool, right? And he'll send you accounting and everything. So anyway, that's what we aim here to do. Help one another out when we can. And I'll put the link to his fundraiser in the notes to the show. So if you want to do that. Also, I am having a webinar, and I'm just now starting to send out notices for people who've signed up. Now, if you're a member of the 11th House Club or the 11th House Association, our group, right? If you're a subscriber, I am going to send out an email tomorrow for everybody that's at the 10 and the $20 membership. You guys, if you're a $10 member, you get one free webinar. If you're a $20 member, you get 2 free webinars. If you're a $5 member, you get to be a part of the group webinar. But this is also a good time for you if you want to bump up and get to the next level at the $10 membership. You'll be able to attend a free webinar. And this is for the Sabian Symbols webinar, which is coming up here pretty quickly. And let me show you guys that real fast. That's in 2 weeks, not this weekend, but the following. And the results, or the people that are signing up, pretty good, I have to say. Pretty good turnout, pretty robust. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of that, and then we'll jump into the show. I mean, we're already kind of in the show, but here we go. So this is it. We've got the webinar 326. This has changed. This should be, I'm sorry, it's 10 a.m. CST. I don't know why this has not changed. But let me see if I change it down here. Oh, man. Okay. So I apologize. It is 10 a.m. CST, not 12 p.m. But we get into the Sabian symbols, where they come from, what other traditions or systems use something like the Sabian symbols, like the Inner Degrees by Elias Lonsdale. We'll talk about Mark Edmund Jones, the Sabian Brotherhood. We'll talk about Elsie Wheeler. We'll talk about how they're really good for having a synchronistic relationship with looking at a chart, decoding a chart. And also I'll have a form set up. So we'll go through, I'll show you how to look up your symbols, the sequence of the symbols, and then we'll use Mandala by Rudyard to decode some of the symbols. And at the end of the webinar, you'll figure out how to fill in every one of your positions in the chart that everybody will get. So you'll have ascendant, sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, all the way up through the midheaven and true node. Like, you'll be able to put in the symbols for those luminaries, right? Or those aspects. So that's all in 2 Saturdays. Pretty good price. It's $29. And if you choose not to use this as a free webinar and you are a subscriber at those 2 levels, I'm not sure why you wouldn't, but theoretically you get some percentage off of this. Like, so if you're a Jove member, which is the $20 membership, you get 10% off. If you're a Mars member, you get 5% off. But I think you just probably want to do the free webinar. Anyway, there it is. I apologize. It is at 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay. All right. There's that. And I'll put a link in the liner notes for the show, or the show notes. Anyway, I just, again, I want to, I don't always do like kind of an opening prayer. Sometimes I just get right into it. And sometimes I feel like doing it. Tonight's one of those nights where I feel like, here's what I want to pray for. I want to pray for consciousness. I want to pray for consciousness, and I want to pray for awareness. And I want to pray for people having the courage to admit that they've been wrong. It's a big deal to admit that you've been wrong. Instead of doubling down and saying, you know what, fuck that. I'm going to give me another 5 shots, or, like, it takes courage to admit that you were wrong. It takes humility to admit, and we all have to do it. I have to admit I'm wrong. Like, we all have to do it. And I try to limit it. Trust me, I'm not into being wrong. Okay. I'm also not into proving I'm right. There's a difference between proving you're right versus being wrong. Those are two different like worlds. Those are two different ego stroke keys. One is more like, hey, I don't want to fuck up. And the other is like, hey, I want to prove to you that, I have more superior knowledge than you do. And I'm not always, into that. Although sometimes you kind of have to do it, but how you do it is a very important, I think, human technique. Anyway, I'm not a very good prayer. I wish I could be a better prayer. Some people are natural born prayers. They're just really, really good at it. In human design, I'm something called anti-theist. That doesn't mean I'm anti-God. I it's everything. God is everything. But I don't have a particular orthodox walk with that faith. Okay. It's never been part of my world. Although I've had an esoteric walk with it. That's for certain. So I just want to pray for people, to the best of my ability, for consciousness to enter into their awareness, and to have a sense of bravery and courage and humility in their hearts to admit that they were wrong, and to understand that there were people who were very steadfast in their position around certain things that are medically related. And it's okay to acknowledge that in the manifestation of those people, there is a part of yourself, right? There is a steadfast part of yourself. And you were being steadfast, or they were being steadfast in a way that they believed was the party line. And in truth, right? It's truth, because it solved a lot of problems. It solved a lot of issues by just checking that box and doing something that was for the good of others. And also, if you had some kind of investment in your work life or any of those things, I could see why people said yes to that. However, that said, there is a lot of scar tissue that's come about as a result of that. So for people who were on the outside of that, for people who were not committing to that path, it's an opportunity for you to forgive people who might have been less than open to your point of view, and might have actually exhibited a high degree of not only hubris, but control as well. So if you can, find it in your heart to forgive these people who probably would like to say, I fucked up, I made a mistake. It can be a very synergistic moment, because we need those people. We need the people who were really judgmental and said, you're an idiot, or you're putting our family at risk, because there's an opportunity for them now to step back and maybe re-examine the choices that they made. And the one thing that I try to practice, I'm not always great at it, but I try to practice it, is to help people save face. Because here in the West, we're not very good at it. We're really good at the gotcha moment. Ha ha, I gotcha. Gotcha, motherfucker. Look at you. You were wrong. right? Like we're really into the gotcha moment. We live for the fucking gotcha moment. Like all of our comedians have been wired for the gotcha moment. That's not how they operate in places like Japan. The gotcha moment could really you you know push people into suicide, into harikari in Japan. Totally. They've learned how to save face, right? Like they give you an out. And that's what the bowing thing is all about. Well, how about you? No, you bow to me. How about you? Oh, you bow to me. So, you know, it's that's kind of what saving face is about, right? So we need to be able to like integrate that a little bit more. And especially when we have a lot of people who probably want to come in from the cold. We need them now. We need them because now they want to take those people and just herd them right into the next thing, right? The blue and gold, the IKEA revolution, the Walmart revolution. Of course, we're talking about Ukraine. They just want to herd them right into there and just take their attention and hijack it. Pump the brakes, right? Pump the brakes, humanity. Pump the brakes. So I'm praying for consciousness, conscious awareness, and the ability to have such a high level of conscious awareness from disparate groups now who now see what's going on and are not being marched lockstep into this new thing, that we can use our consciousness and awareness to turn the tables. Because I'm going to tell you right now, here's what you're going to see over the course of the next 6 months to a year. And it could happen as quickly as June, July. And that is a high degree and level of corruption that will be exposed with the United States of America. And it will not be the gotcha moment that we're all looking for. Like, aha, we got these motherfuckers. We got them dead to rights. No, the corruption will be revealed to prove that the United States is a failed system, that it's a failed country, that it's used its great wealth, its great privilege, and great resources to wreak havoc and damage on a large portion of the world. And guess what? They're probably not too far wrong with that assessment. That said, there's very little that the people of the United States could actually do about that shit, okay? Small group of people hijack the system, run the banking system, run the military industrial complex, right? Run the media, run big pharma, and they're just running the country right into the cliff face. Think of that jet that took off with Ron Brown and all those members of the Democratic Party, with all those business people going over to the former Iron Curtain to set up all these new business arrangements. And that plane flies right into the side of a mountain in Bosnia, led into that mountain by a transponder that was relocated, and that plane picking up in that transponder thinking it's actually the airport. That's what they're doing to this country. They're going to run this country just like that plane right into the side of the mountain. Okay. So we need all hands on deck here. We need as many people that are on Team Awaken so that we can hold the space for really waking up en masse and being preemptive. What does that mean to be preemptive? Well, when Mars comes back into Aries, like we'll see some preemptivity. You know, one group has preached preemptive ever since, well, 9/11, 2001. And even before that, that's a group called the neocons. They're all into being preemptive. We need to be preemptive. We can't play catch up. Well, we're already way behind now. We got to get into a 2-minute offense. And the 2-minute offense is that we need to understand who is controlling the game. This is of vital importance. We got to get out ahead of this. We got to get out ahead of the corruption thing, right? We've got to get out ahead of it because it's going to come back and get us. And they will use corruption to disassemble this structure. And the legacy of the United States as a result of this will go down in history as one of the worst pariahs of international rights and corruption on the face of it. They will compare the United States, and this is by way of not just coincidence, but strategy and planning. They will compare the United States to Nazi Germany, okay? They will do this. And guess what will happen? all of the people who are involved in actually staging the corruption, actually staging those regime changes and those interventions, they will get off scot-free. They will just shapeshift and morph into whatever they're going to become next. Liberals, conservatives, who knows? Who cares? They don't. But you should. You need to. So we got to get out in front of this. We don't have a lot of time. It's the 2-minute offense. So I want you to be thinking along these lines, right? This is where we are now. This is part of astrology in the Aquarian age, which is what we're going to get into. This is how I'm going to transition and segue into this. Is that we have to be preemptive. We have to be, there is an information war going on right now. This is part of 5th generation warfare. You have to be a member of this 5th generation warfare. It means you have to have understanding, knowledge, and information all your fingertips, and you need to be able to translate that in any way, shape, or form that's possible, through memes, through Twitter posts, whatever. Make videos. We have to enlighten people. We have to make people aware of the fact that we are being taken right into the abattoir. We are being taken right into the slaughterhouse. And it's through these Aquarian tools that we have at our disposal, like I'm using right here, right now, which offer us the opportunity to spread this message. We got to get out ahead of the curve. And so I've been thinking a lot about astrology in general, and I think it's a great system. And you're going to see how great it is tonight because of the stuff that we're going to go through. But where are we with astrology as a system? Now, there's always new people that are discovering astrology, which is great. There's so many like TikTok astrologers. There's so many new Twitter astrologers. It's really inspiring in a lot of ways. It's inspiring kind of watching them wake up and saying, well, this is this and this is that. So there's a learning phase with astrology that has to do with understanding the chart as it relates to who you are, like yourself, right? Know thyself. And having an astrology chart is a really great way to do that. Knowing your astrology chart is a really great way to do that. Not everybody can do it. It's okay. I can't make a really great looking wooden box like Ryan, our friend, the introspective woodworker, or any other number of, really high end wooden projects that he does. I can't do that. I'm not sure Ryan can break down a chart, and that's okay. This is what makes the world go around. This is where we come into this Aquarian model where we're all a spoke on this wonderful wheel, right? And the hub of that spoke is creation, and we're all spoke there. And every single spoke is important. You may have one spoke break off or two, but the more spokes you have break off that wheel, guess what happens? The wheel becomes unbalanced, and then it loses its integrity. So we're all really important, right? We're all very important. We're all incredible, like additions to the spoke of that wheel. And right now, there's a lot of broken spokes on the wheel. There just are. So we need to, have some of these people who want to say, I fucked up. That's okay. We'll screw you back into the wheel. Come on, let's go. We got to keep going. We got a new cycle that we're in right now. So, where are we with astrology in the Aquarian age? Well, because of where the outer planets are, and really have been in a lot of ways for a while, with the exception of like Uranus in Aries and Uranus and Taurus, which are personal planets, the astrology of our time has a lot to do with culture. It has a lot to do with where we're at, what's going on with Pluto in these final degrees of Capricorn, where Pluto is headed into Aquarius, which is incredibly collective. It's really beyond the individual. The apotheosis of the individual being Leo, the opposite sign. So when we go into Aquarius, we're not in the like, look at me, aren't I special? I have all these like great things that I can do, and I can be this and I can be that, and I grew up to be president. Like that's over. Okay. We're moving into this period of individuation, and you can be unique and you can be theoretically special. And we all are in our own way. We all have our contributions to make. And so this is an important thing to recognize and understand. And where we are with kids that are growing up and being born, this is my feeling, is that they have less individuation to do. This is the idea, right? As we move into Gen Z, who you're going to meet next week, Gen Z, Gen A, who are like you. Gen A is a freak show, especially now that Gen A also includes the brown-eyed babies. Okay, so these successive generations, and I would say even Gen Y, who are the millennials. The millennials are I've talked about the millennials. I love the millennials. I sound like Donald Trump now. I got to work on a Trump accent. I got to get a Trump. Trevor Noah does a pretty good Trump. Anyway, the millennials, once they move into that deep commitment that Pluto and Scorpio has with it at a collective level, they're integrated. They're totally but until they move into that deep commitment and so they've gone through a lot of really intense changes because a lot of them have Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn. So they've had Pluto going through Neptune and Uranus, which has really been transforming them as a kind of a generational unit. And with Capricorn, they have issues around fathers and institutions and government and corporations. So a lot of them are like, hey, let's bring on the whole communist thing. It's, I'm saddled with $40,000 of student debt. Fuck it. Why not? I can't seem to get ahead right now in this system. Let's burn it down and start a new one. But once they get through some of that and want to take responsibility for creating the world that they would like to live in, not the world they don't want to live in, integrated. Gen Z is strangely integrated. Like they pretty much know who they are, although some of them are going through some of the weird like gender stuff. Because as we know, Gen Z is born with Pluto and Sagittarius. The back end of that is Gemini. So they're dealing with back end issues and this whole identity thing. This is what happens when you deal with Pluto. You're dealing also with the opposite sign. So if you're like a Pluto and Leo, right? What's your sign and signifier opposite Pluto and Leo? It's Aquarius. What's the theme song of your generation? The Age of Aquarius by the Fifth Dimension. So these opposite signs really inform these generational units based on where Pluto is. And again, I think Pluto in Virgo is a lot less like baby boomer. They're just, they're just, Pluto and Virgo is just not really baby boomer. It's this weird kind of interregnum between Gen X. Like there are some people at Pluto in Virgo who I do think are Gen X. So if you were born, let's say 1967, 67, right around there, 67, I think you probably qualify as like Gen X, even though Pluto's in Virgo. I'd say you're Gen X. From say 59 to about 65, 66, you're in this weird little cushion zone, right? Because you're still getting transmissions from the past. You're coming home from school and you're watching Leave It to Beaver probably on TV or stuff coming from the early 60s or the late 50s. So you're soaking up sort of the last remnants of boomer gravy. That's it, right? You're soaking up the last remnants of boomer gravy and boomer culture. So the idea now is that these generations successfully will be more integrated. They'll know who they are. Yeah, sure, astrology will play a role in understanding certain things that they can do, what their interests are, what some of their challenges are. But we have to look at astrology now through this collective window. And because we're consistently engaged in world events now. I mean, before we'd have events that were based on countries and based on regions or even bioregions or states. We're not there anymore. Everything now is global. And they've wired it up this way. I mean, this is, again, a precursor to Pluto in Aquarius. So what happens with astrology is that the use, in my estimation, for astrology now is less personal and more collective. And it doesn't always mean collective in the collective sense of, oh, look who's here when I talk about collective. It doesn't always mean about collective in the world sense, although yes, that's true. But it's also collective in the sense that we are connected to groups and subgroups and subgroups, like wheels within wheels within wheels. And as a result of that, that is the next development of our level of consciousness. So we need to begin to like adapt and evolve along these lines. And if we don't adapt and evolve along these lines, then what will happen is that the people that want to create this new schema will adapt and have us evolve along their lines. So figure it out. Now, what's really been a challenge is that when we had the COOF was something that you could deal with on a face-to-face level, or at least face-to-mask level at sometimes. But you'd go to a place and you could see the manifestation of the COOF. You could see the manifestation of the tyranny. You could. It was right there. And unfortunately, it was somebody who stood outside of a front door somewhere and said you could either enter or not enter. But that's who they were. They were the manifestation of that tyranny, even though they were just doing their job, right? How many times did you hear that?
Sorry, I'm just doing my job. I'm sorry, I can't serve you. I'm just doing my job. I wish I could, but it's the rules of the restaurant, and it's the rules of the health commission here.
It's like, how many times do you hear that? But you could see that person had become Agent Smith. That person had become Agent Smith in the Matrix. And so you could fuck with it a little bit. You could fuck with it. Like we were laughing last night. I went to, long story, but I was going to Walmart to actually buy something. I could have it delivered to me. It doesn't matter. It's through Walmart. It doesn't fucking matter. I can get this thing through any other place, right? But it just so happened that Walmart had it, or I thought they did. Anyway, we were going to Walmart last night, and we were cracking it up because there was a time when we went in through the wrong door. We went in through the wrong door, and of course they were getting people to mask up. We just blew through this door, and I think it was one of the young ladies at the front kept chirping at us to go back and go through the other fucking cattle, the cattle pen through the other door. We just kept going. But you can do stuff like that, right? You could kind of prank that moment. And it was, it was somewhat fun in some ways. Like if you had any kind of rebellious streak, it was like, oh yeah, this is fun. Sometimes it wasn't fun. For some people, it was a real pain in the ass. But you had it, right? It was there. It was like there was this tangible thing and people were acting out this tangible thing. Now there's no tangible thing. What the tangible thing is happening theoretically in Ukraine and Russia. So it's like, okay, all right, there's this global thing going on, but now we don't have anything to bounce off against because it's all over there. It's fucking brilliant in a lot of ways, right? But again, it's still an Aquarian moment. It is still an Aquarian moment because the whole world now is engaged in it. So astrology, in my opinion, doesn't lose its personal meaning. Like you can go through transits that I think are pretty significant, especially with outer planets. Those don't change. They're there. They have an impact on your life. But the lens that we look at astrology through now, I think, is more collective than it is personal, because we're tied into these global events. We're tied into a camel farting somewhere, and then it all of a sudden having this chaos, theory impact on the bond market, right? You remember that book, A Butterfly Flaps Its Wings in China, and a storm brews in Africa as a result. That was the whole idea of chaos theory, that there were these things that would happen that would lead to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, and that there would be a chain reaction to these things that would happen, and they would be linked, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to have one thing over here connect with the other thing over there. They were very, very disparate in a lot of ways, but you could trace like that event having this impact and amplification on other events, which lead ultimately to a macro event. So we're in that place now where the collective awareness is, in a lot of ways, much more emphasized than the individual awareness. And that's a reason for that too, by the way, because they want people to think more along those lines. They don't want people to think of themselves as individuals. They don't. You don't matter. You don't count. What matters is what you can do for the greater good, which apparently now is sending money to Ukraine. So go send money to Ukraine. That's part of the greater good. I could think of better places to send money, like this country and people that have had their businesses wiped out. Anyway. All right. So again, I'm trying to keep this into an astrological context, but this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that how we are evolving now as individuals is linked to the collective vibrations and perturbations of the world that we're inhabiting. And at the same time, we are not that world, that we are something beyond that world. But because of where the planetary emphasis has been, especially with the super conjunction in Jupiter and Saturn for the next 20 years, we are in this collective birthing phase. So, I guess my advice to you would be looking at your chart from an expanded view. Like, look at your chart from an expanded view, which means you're going to look at yourself from an expanded view to get above your chart and to look at how your chart connects with, more ideas around finding your gifts and talents. And there's tools and keys for that, plugging them in a way that allows you to be integrated and individuated, and at the same time interconnect with others in order to do that. I think in a couple of weeks, I'm going to bring somebody on who is a level 5 human design person. And I've been learning a little bit more about human design. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I think human design is really good for like understanding strategies. Understanding strategies and types. I think it's really good for that. It helped me as a projector understand, where, I've gone wrong and could go wrong. Understand this idea of the invitation, which is a little daunting when you wrap your head around it at first. But once I figured that out and made peace with it, it became something of merit. And I really appreciate the fact that I learned about it, because it saved me a lot of heartache in some ways and effort that probably would have been expelled and not been manifested in ways that were meaningful. So I think human design is really good for that. Interesting. I do think it's a little narrow for me, just a little bit. I do like astrology, and I think astrology and human design, if you can, merge them. And I know David Palmer has talked about this, and it's an idea that I'm definitely interested in, because I don't just want to give up astrology. A long time ago, I interviewed Genoa Oblivion, who I think took over for Ra after Ra departed from this world. And Genoa was a full-on, really hardcore astrologer. And when he found human design, I think it changed his life, because I think Genoa was also an Aries, like Ra, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But Ra's an Aries, and Ra Uru, the founder of human design. And there's an Aries-like quality to human design, even though there's a lot of layers to human design, and it could take you a long time to really understand it, learn it, master it. There is this kind of Aries-like, at a certain level, an Aries-like application, like 4 types with kind of a subtype for one of the 4 types, right? You got your generator, get your projector, manifestor, reflector, and you throw in maybe the manifesting generator. Well, the number 4 is connected to the 4th month, which is the sign of Aries. So makes sense, right? And there is a straightforwardness and directness about human design. I should do Ra's chart one of these nights. Maybe we'll do that. So I think I'll probably have Stacy Weckstein on, and Stacy is a level 5 human design teacher that has helped me out with a few things on my website. So I think I'll have her on. Maybe I'll have a good discussion about this, and maybe we'll look at Ra's chart, and we'll look at in human design and look at his astrology chart and see what we can come up with. Anyway, that's another tool that you can use, right, to understand who you are a little bit here. So you can plug in, or you need to plug in. You need to figure out who you are. There's not a lot of time left, right? We're on the clock. So you got to get it. You got to get it, figure out who you are, and figure out what you can do, and figure out how you can plug in with this evolving consciousness, because that's where we are through astrology. We're either going to be linked into these macro events and jacked in and plugged in like batteries in the fucking matrix, or you're going to unplug from that and you will align yourself with another version of this simulacra of reality that they want to create. So that's my piece on astrology with where we are right now. Like this idea of, I don't want to use the word navel gazing, right? I don't want to use the word navel gazing, but this idea that we have to understand implicitly who we are before we can do anything. I think the sands and the hourglass of time are running down there. Like, let's get there. Let's get there. And sometimes astrology reading can be very helpful to that end and help you get there. Like boom, 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 zoom in, right? Here, boom, go. Sometimes a human design reading can do that. You get the right person. It's all about the right person. And this is where we are now. So the other thing is that if you embrace who you are, it's like, okay, well, I know that I can do this, and this, and I've done this in the past. And so I've got a track record of being able to do these things. I can integrate that. I also want to let go of things from the past, because the things that I hold on to are the things that keep me from moving forward and allow me to embrace my gifts and where we are right now, where I am right now, so that I can make these interstitial connections with other people and we can create a different kind of world than the one that has been a shit sandwich, really, since, in my estimation, a shit sandwich since 9/11, 2001. Although there was another event that I think was the real precursor for the world that we're living in now. And it's an event that you may not necessarily think of as being one of those events, but when you think about it and really spend some time with it, and again, I'll probably do the astrology on that at some point. Maybe I'll do next week. It's the O.J. Simpson trial. The O.J. Simpson trial is a really, really pivotal event. And it's a pivotal event for a number of different reasons. Number one, it becomes this precursor for what will happen later on during the Obama administration. Number two, there is this sense that he was guilty as fuck and he got off. And that's like letting Hannibal Lecter walk away at the end of Silence of the Lambs. It's a pivotal moment. It's a really, really pivotal moment where everybody looking around goes, that motherfucker is guilty, right? He's guilty as sin. And then they have this weird show trial. They do this weird thing with the hands. And what did they do? They put something on his hands. What was it? It was to make them swell. There's a thing you put on your hands to make them swell. I forget which one it is, what thing it is. It's yeah. I think it was was it mosquito repellent? They used to be able to do that. Like they did it in the movie Platoon. One of the guys sprayed mosquito repellent on his repellent. He didn't want to fight, and his hands were all swollen. And his CEO Tom Berenger, he knew. Anyway, it was Bunny. Well, no, it wasn't Bunny. It was Bunny's buddy. Anyway, so OJ's hands swelled up. If the glove don't fit, don't acquit, right? That was it. That was where the case pivoted. There's a whole lot of weird shit with that case. We should go back and look at that at some point in time. Maybe I'll do that on the Monday through Thursday show. Anyway, that was another portal. That portal was a big portal because everybody knew he was guilty as fuck and he gets away. And that's a big thing to happen inside of the system. It created a glitch in the matrix and a disturbance in the system. And a glitch in the matrix, not a really great glitch either.
So, all right, you want to get with the time, right? You want to get with the time. You want to set your clock and you want to get with the time. The time is we're moving away from individual consciousness into individuated consciousness. And that individuated consciousness has a relationship with everyone and everything else. And we see ourselves as part of this macro whole. And they've done everything in their power to disassemble us and to put us into this fractal mode where people bark at each other, have their gotcha moments, hate each other, and continue to divide and conquer and divide and conquer. And it's up to us to restitch the fabric of our humanity. Okay, let's look at Miss Hacky Sacky. There she is with her little pink Russian hat. And of course, the Kremlin red star right in the middle, let you know who she is, right? Now, again, Sagittarius is supposed to tell the truth. She's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 luminaries. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 luminaries in Sagittarius. Her moon is conjunct the galactic center. Very, very expansive. She has, Sagittarius is an athletic sign. It's a very athletic sign. She went to William and Mary, and she was on the swim team. So Mercury, Neptune conjunction, Mercury, of course, being how we move in the world, Neptune being water. She's a swimmer. She swam. She was on, I think, on the women's William and Mary swim team. Not that she was probably any threat to break any collegiate records, but Sagittarius does have some athletic ability. She's got Jupiter and Leo, and she's got an exact trine with her sun. So Leo is the sign of an actor. She's a very good actor. Jen Sack, say what you want about her. She's a lying sacky of shit. I mean, you can say that. I wouldn't have a problem with that because she's not told the truth on any number of occasions. She might be more important than Biden at this point because Biden can't articulate anything. And not only can Psaki articulate things, but she's very good at articulating through obfuscation and hyperbole and abstraction and misdirection. Much better. She's much better than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was trying to teach people about, she was on some podcast or something? I think it was on some black podcast, and she was talking about Ukraine and Russia, and she was fucking talking to these people like she was a third grade teacher. I swear to God. And condescending. Ukraine is a country. It's not a very big country. It's a country in Europe, and it is next to Russia, which is a much bigger country. Russia's a very big, I swear to God, I'm not, yanking your chain here. This is how she talked to these people. Psaki is better than Harris in that regard. Think of if Harris had to talk every day and take questions from Peter Ducey. Harris would blow her gasket. Whoever or whatever Harris is would blow their gasket. I'm telling you right now. Jen Psaki doesn't do it. You rarely see Jen Psaki get ruffled. Whatever you think of her, she is very good at what she does. She's a first-class liar, but she's very good at it. So where do we see the potential for lying? It's right there. Neptune and Mercury, bada bing, right? Conjunction. Whenever you get those two planets or any two planets together that tight, they're inseparable. They're totally inseparable. So we can see here that she has the ability, I think, to rationalize her less than being truthful. She can rationalize it. How can she rationalize it? ideology. She can rationalize it through her ideology. Because with Neptune and Sagittarius, which by the way is exalted, and she is a Gen X, she's one of yours. Sagittarius is connected to things like ideologies and belief systems. And if she has a very strong ideology and a very strong belief system, let's say it's this idea that communism will be the savior system of all humanity, or maybe Illuminism, whatever that is. If she's into it, she'll be able to make excuses or justify whatever it is she's saying, even if she's lying, because there's this idea that she's doing it for something bigger than herself, which is what Sagittarius is invested in. Then she's got this Sun Jupiter square, which is weird, right? I'm sorry, Sun Jupiter trine. That's a Sun Saturn square. Sun Jupiter trine. It's going to expand her Sagittarian potential. And even a wide trine with Neptune. It's 8 degrees. It's still a trine. And it's even in trine with Mercury, 9 degrees. So that's a trine. So Jupiter is making everything bigger. So if she tells a lie, she may as well tell a really big fucking lie with Jupiter there. And with Jupiter, she'll play the part. She'll play the role. She will be convinced from this, Jupiterian place, her heart, right? So Jen Psaki, I wouldn't want to play poker with her. I think she would take your money because she would only take your money if she believed she was taking your money for the right cause. So if she thought that you were some, I don't know, conservative scum or something like that, and she wanted to take your money, she could do it. I can tell you right now, she could do it. And the reason why is because she could lie. Now, is there a penalty for her lying? I think so. She's got this Saturn square going on with her Sun, and Saturn square going on with Neptune, right? Saturn square going on with Mercury. So theoretically, you would think that with Saturn there, that if she went too far, over the edge, that Saturn would snap back and have some kind of comeuppance. And I think generally that's true. But you also have to understand that she has this trine with Jupiter in her chart too. So she's dealing with Saturn squares and Jupiter trines. Who's going to win out? Who is going to win out in this morality tale inside of Jen Psaki? Is it the angel over here on the left, or on the right rather, because she's already on the left? Is it the angel on the right who's basically saying, look, you're a fucking liar, and you were raised in a religious household? I think her father is Greek. He's Greek, probably Greek Orthodox. I think the mother is Irish, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, probably raised in a religious house. She probably had some religious training besides the post-grad in Luciferianism, right? So she probably had some of that in her upbringing. That's Saturn, right? That's the father as well. And I wonder how I'm sure her father's probably in some ways proud of her. He's a real estate developer, by the way. Father's big time real estate. And if you wanted to, you could even phone his office in Maryland and congratulate him on having such a fine daughter. You could do that. I mean, not that I'm telling you to, but you could, his business is listed. You call him, hey, is this Mr. Psaki? Mr. Psaki, I just want to tell you, your daughter is doing a really great job for the Ukrainians. So Saturn's big in the chart. Saturn's theoretically the conscience. It's squaring Mercury, it's squaring Neptune, squaring the Sun. It's in Virgo, judgment. But then she's got Jupiter and Leo. It's like, hey, fuck Saturn. I'm just going to roll with Jupiter here. But with Black Moon Lilith, there can be even a bit of an issue with Black Moon Lilith there. I think she's a mother, isn't she? I think she's a mother. It's interesting. So we're looking at a morality tale in Jen Psaki. Who's going to win out? Is it going to be Saturn or is it going to be Jupiter? Saturn, Jupiter. Right now, I think she's rolling big time with Jupiter. I can tell you that right now. She's got Saturn sextiles going on, so we wanted to put in some transits, right? So Saturn is in Aquarius. Again, I don't know her birth time, so I just wanted to put the sun right there at about 12 noon. Because if I wanted to put it here with on the ascendant, she's not that tall. Now, technically speaking, again, with the South Node in Pisces, she can't lie. There is a cosmic order here. There is a cosmic order. So she has to lean into Virgo. And Virgo doesn't really lie all that much. It's not a sign. It's a sign that has a tremendous amount of guilt. So only somebody who has a pretty powerful Jupiterian override could get away with that. And she's got this Moon Mars conjunction. And maybe that has something to do with her red hair. You know, Mars being the red planet. And Moon Mars conjunction is pretty fiery. It's a pretty fiery conjunction with Moon conjunct the galactic center. She's convinced. Like, she is convinced that she is on a mission from God. I can tell you that right now. Whatever God she's praying to, she's convinced she's on a mission from God, because that's what happens with the galactic center. Right there, 27 degrees. New moon, so she's adventurous. You know, people that are born in new moon, they want to fill their cup. They want to fill their cup with experiences. And I'm not here I'm not here as a spokesperson or an apologist for Jen Psaki. I'm just looking at her chart, because that's what we're supposed to do as astrologers. I'm supposed to look at this from kind of an agnostic place. So with all this Jupiter expansion, trining her sun and Neptune and Mercury, she's just going to lean into what she's feeling, right? Whatever kind of inspiration, because remember now, that's her ruling planet. Jupiter's her ruling planet, and it's in a fire sign. So I think she's going to have way more combustibility with this trine than she would with this square. What's interesting is I think she was part of the Obama administration. She went through that. I think she's going to have an issue. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out where she's going to have an issue. She'll have an issue, but she may not be on our radar. Although I will tell you, I think that they have big plans for Jen Psaki. She just did this standalone thing talking about petroleum, Neptune conjunct her sun. She just did this standalone thing where she was explaining why, lying through her teeth, by the way, why we're having a gas shortage, or not a gas shortage, but a steep increase of the price at the pumps. She did it all with a straight face, but it was a standalone. It wasn't like she was there in front of all the White House pool reporters at Tyler Perry set down in Atlanta. This was a standalone video. I think they have plans for Jen Psaki. They could be political. They could be social in terms of TV, social influencer, perhaps. I could see that. I think that in their world, they probably see her as a star. And astrologically, she has a very interesting stellium of Sagittarius planets. If she's enthused and if she is fired up and has a lot of enthusiasm and conviction, that's a big word, conviction. She's very, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? Sellable. Now, I think she's going to have some issues here. It's with Neptune. Neptune's what, at 22 degrees? So it's starting to go into square with Mars in her chart. And it's coming in on her south node. So when you get into that Neptune square Mars, that can douse the flame. That can douse the flame of enthusiasm. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Miss Saki over the course of the next 6 months to a year. There was a period where she was out of commission. Like people said she had COVID or something, and she did have the black eye. She had the black eye, so who knows? She might be running the Vril program. But I do think with this Neptune, place Neptune right there, just right on the cusp of her south node, that could be tricky. Because again, when we get into the south node and Pisces, we're dealing with things like petroleum and gas and fluids. And it moves into this square with Mercury. So she could be asked to sell a bill of goods right now. And her ability to do that might take a hit. It might take a hit. Because she clearly lied when she was talking about the reason why we're paying so much is because of Russia. No, that's not true. By the way, Russia will continue to sell gas to China, continue to sell gas to wherever. It may wind up back here, and we'll pay 3 times the amount. And if you're a petroleum company, you're going to make money off of that. Every time it changes hands, you're theoretically making money. And does she have some investments in the petroleum business? Maybe her dad does. They can do that, you know. There is this thing called the Stock Act, but it's just bullshit. Obama put the Stock Act in what was it, 2013 or 2014? Basically says that Congress and Senate, they can't do these naked trades where they're getting all this insider info. They had a 60-minute special on it. It made the 202 look bad. So Obama passed the Stock Act, or he passed a new iteration of it. He beefed it up. But then less than a year later, they amended it so that if you make a trade and you remember Congress or the Senate, it's completely private. Like there's no transparency and there's no record of it either. So it was just all window fucking dressing. All these people were so adamant on Twitter the other day when it was pointed out that you could still do it. No, he couldn't. He passed that. No, they amended the fucking thing. Read it. Okay. All right. So she's got issues coming up, and it might have to do with this oil stuff because guess what? South node on her, Neptune's on her south node. It could be like Victoria Nuland bringing biscuits to Kiev. Jen Psaki's famous, no, the reason why gas prices are so high is because of Russia. And remember, Sagittarius rules foreign countries. There is a part of her also that I would say is ruthless. That's Venus in Scorpio. And Venus in Scorpio is about power. And she's got a Venus square to Jupiter in her chart. To me, that's ruthless. It's like she will do pretty much anything, court any kind of relationship in order to theoretically have more power. Her husband, I think, does something similar. He works for one of the Kennedys. I think he's one of the like the lead aide for one of the Kennedys, one of the young Kennedys. What do you think of Jen Psaki? Huh? She's a redhead like you. You're a better redhead. You're not. You got some red in you. Yeah, I think she's ruthless. I think she's into power. Venus and Scorpio, square Jupiter in Leo. And she'll break contracts. even though she's got a sextile to Saturn. Okay, so that's interesting. This is a good astrology lesson here. So with the Venus sextile to Saturn, the individual is encouraged to honor commitments. The more that they honor commitments, the more that they get out of that sextile. Enduring relationships, and if it's in Scorpio, the power that the individual is seeking in order to connect with another person will be balanced by the fair adjudication of that relationship as it relates to Saturn, because Saturn adheres to rules. Again, she's got this square, which she's got this weird thing, right? Saturn and Jupiter, which is orbiting her chart. Or she can go with the Venus Jupiter square and cut some corners and break some deals and align herself with the people that are going to give her the greatest degree. And I think she probably does both. I think she's probably loyal to a certain group of people. Like maybe she's loyal to Obama or Val Jared or President Diaper or whatever. I'm sure she's loyal. They're maybe loyal to her husband. But then with this Venus Jupiter square, she's like, okay, well, what can I do in order to increase and better my position? And I don't really give a fuck. Right. So I think Saki is a very interesting study of morality and immorality. That's what I think. And I think there's a morality that suits her own evolution. And by the way, if she could, let's say, for instance, that she was somebody who was not in the business of fooling people. Okay. Let's say that her ideology, which is connected to her subjective relationship with truth, was not linked together with those two things. If her ideology was more objective, I think she could actually be very, very interesting. Like this is one of the things about somebody like Jen Psaki. You have to wonder when she goes through the Saturn opposition, when she's forward, because Sagittarians will do this. Sagittarians will have a flip with morality in their lives. And I'll say this, maybe because who knows, maybe she's got the Vril program writing her, and this conversation is about a year and a half and one soul too late, right? But let's say, for instance, she is still somewhat human and not just run by the Vril. And she's a Sagittarius. With the Saturn opposition, she can do a flip because Sagittarians will do this. You'll see this with Sagittarians. They'll be completely debauched and then they'll go down a different path. And they're like, okay, well, guess what? I'm really moral now. And like Bill Hicks was like that in a lot of ways. He always had the Sagittarian truth teller thing, but once he stopped drinking and doing drugs, he still smoked, but he was on a different path at that point. And even his comedy got sharper and more aligned with truth. By the way, he's not Alex Jones. They knew he's not Alex Jones. Different, similar, but different. Who else does the Sagittarian flip? Beckett, the historical figure Beckett, does the Sagittarian flip. He's debauched, has this consecration, this revelation, this moment with God, and he actually becomes, I think, a bishop, right? And he turns away from the life of debauchery. And I think he was buddies with the king, and the king, wants him to do something. I think it's kind of like I think it was his name, Thomas More, like a Thomas More moment. But he can't break his vow to the church. So he becomes this very moral figure, and he leans into his morality to the point where he gets his head chopped off because he won't do what the fucking king said. And the king was his buddy. He was his hunting buddy, his drinking buddy, his whoring buddy. But he pivots. He makes his pivot. That's what Sagittarius does. So she's coming up on this Saturn opposition, and she'll make a pivot. So the left better hope that Jen Psaki doesn't see the light and doesn't hear the voice of God. Because I could tell you right now, she could be a rabid motherfucking truther. She is a rabid foot soldier for her ideology. I can tell you that clearly. If she's got a Jupiter-Uranus square, she has no problem breaking rules. None. Her water is afflicted. She's got Venus in Scorpio. It's in conjunction with Uranus, so she's going to have unusual connections, unusual partnerships, unusual relationships. Might even be a little kinky. But it's not like soft water. It's not nurturing water like Cancer, or it's not deep, soulful, imaginative, emotional water like Pisces. It's more along the lines of what can I get water in Scorpio. So she doesn't have a lot of empathy. I think the empathy can come out a little bit if she's with people that she respects and those people are in positions of power. Then her emotionality can come through. Other than that, no, I don't think so. She doesn't have a lot of Earth either. She has Saturn. She has the true node in Virgo. And it's funny, her Saturn is conjunct my true node. That's weird. Anyway, not a lot of Earth. She's got some asteroids in Capricorn, Chiron and Taurus, not super grounded. Chiron, I guess she could have like if you throw Pallas into the Grand Trine with Saturn and Chiron, she could have a Grand Trine on Earth, but it's kind of weak Earth. People have Chiron and Taurus, no offense to any Chiron and Taurus people, but having a body, being on the planet, bit of a lesson. Challenging. Something happened to her at the age of 4 or 5. Venus opposition in Scorpio. That's interesting. That could pass for some kind of violation. Quite possibly. But again, not a lot of Earth, so she's not real grounded. Not real grounded. Not real grounded. She's got, I think, self-serving water, dedicated water, but only towards people she respects. Other than that, probably, I'll see what I can get out of this relationship or this thing. But she's got a ton of fire, and she doesn't have a lot of air. She has Pluto and Libra, which we haven't talked about, but it's in sextile with Mercury in her chart. It's in sextile with Mars. And that's kind of formidable. She's got some. I think Jen Psaki is astrologically built and wired for what she's doing. She's built and wired for what she's doing. And she's not carrying anybody's water. Again, I'm not trying to sit here and make a case for Jen Psaki, but there are elements in her chart that are fairly formidable. But she's also lacking some real connection. Again, that nurturing water of Cancer, that soulful water of Pisces, the more grounded nature of Taurus. She's all about self-actualization, self-actualization and aspiring towards some kind of socio-political, religio ideal. They're all tied together there because that's how Sagittarius operates. Keep your eye on her over the course of the next few months. And I can tell you by the if by the end of she will not last the Biden regime. She won't last. She will leave the Biden regime before, if we have a 2024 election and there's no fucking, guarantee, she'll be gone. She won't be there. She's got the Saturn opposition. She's going to have to do something else. So who knows? Maybe it'll be a reality show with Jen Psaki and her aide-de-camp husband. All right. Little Jen Psaki for you. So we're going to take a little bit of a journey here. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to get something to drink. So I'm going to go here. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to play a little it's only going to take me about like 2 minutes. Maybe I'll play a little movie. I'm going to get a bottle of water. I'm going to come back. When we come back, we're going to look at the United States progress chart for a very specific time. It's when the United States progress chart goes into Pisces. And it's been in Pisces since 2005. We're going to look at that chart. And there are two things that I want to pull out of that chart. One of whom relates to, in some ways, Jen Psaki and as an archetype. So don't go away. Let me do this. Let me fire this up. I'll play you. See if I can find it. Here we go. We're going to take a little break here. Here it is right here. Okay. A little silent movie from the, it's called The Trip to the Moon, Le Voyage dans la Lune. So, let me play this for you guys. Just for a minute. I'm going to get something to drink. There is no sound. It's a silent movie. Here we go. Have fun with it. I'll be right back. All right, how's the flick? A little crazy, huh? Looking a little Tartarian there. See, you go from here to there. Simple, right? Very simple. I love these guys. Their pointed hats. Clowns, jesters, and fools. Come on, I'll show you. Wizards. Right? They're wizards. That is so funny. I love the wizardettes sitting down there. What are they doing? Come on, I'll show you. I'll show you what I'm doing. We're going to go to the moon. You're going to need some refreshments. And you'll need gifts. You'll have to take gifts with you. Oh, they're getting their moon suits on now. Oh, yeah. You got to have a moon suit. You just can't show up as a wizard. Look at that. They got their moon suits. Looking very much like military suits. All right, they're ready to go. They got their top hats. They're going to let them know that they're high-ranking Masons when they show up on the moon. See you later. And away we go to the moon. Oh, yeah. The working class is putting the finishing touches on their bullet to the moon with that good old Tartarian technology. Let's jump in there. This is so funny. It's like they've been hammering this damn thing for up, 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 up. Watch out for the hammer. You'll smash his head in. Come, come, come. Let's go. Let's go. We must be off. This is hilarious. It's kind of like the the Apollo moon landing, isn't it? Ah, yes. The signs of industry. Oh, that's their furnace that's going to fire the bullet to the moon. Wow. They figured it out. They've cracked the code. And here's the send-off party. You got to have the moonettes, and they're on their way. They've got their moon gear on. No problem. And they're going to load that big bullet into the cannon and fire right out that hole. And of course, they're taking the most fit and able men to travel to the moon. This is where NASA got their training program. Wait. The moonettes are styling. Look at them. It's like the clown car, but it's a bullet to the moon. How many guys do they have in there? All right, here we go. Load it up. Oh my God. There it is. The cannon to the moon. I'm going to fire that sucker right. Probably just as good as the Apollo flights, right? There we go. Fire away. And they're off. Of course, the most famous scene is when they hit the moon. The old man in the moon. There he is. Nice. He's looking a little evil. Of course, they get off, and now they're on the seas of cheese. There it is. All right. George Mel. Okay, we're back. So thanks for being here. You're watching Sunday Night AstroLive with me, Robert Phoenix. Now that we've spent all this time deconstructing Jen Psaki, I hope I never have to go back there again. I went down this interesting path. Well, before I do that, before I show you the path, do you know what the name of that movie that Alec Baldwin was on, the set where he shot Helena Hutchins, who happened to be Ukrainian? Did you know that? She was Ukrainian. The name of the movie is called Rust, which is also derived from the word Rus, which means red, which is also Russian. That just hit me today. It's like, isn't that interesting? He was on the set of Rust, and he killed a fucking Ukrainian. How about that? Okay. So let's get on with this. The United States, let me show you the chart before I do it. The United States progress chart has the sun in Pisces. It's now a progressed Pisces, which we've looked at before. Okay. We've been here. We've been down this path. San Francisco. All right. So it's at 17 degrees Pisces. And it went, the sun, progressed sun for the United States chart, went into Pisces in 2005. So I decided to go back and look at where the progressions were for March 14th, 2005. Okay, so let's look at the progressed US chart from that time. So we can see the sun there. Now, prior to that, so in 2004, it was in the sign of Aquarius. And what's important about that is that it had been in Aquarius for 30 years. So you go back to 2004, so it'd be 1994, 1984, 1974, 30 years. And if you go back and you look at the 1970s, what do we see? We see Uranus and Scorpio. And Uranus and Scorpio is exalted. And we looked at 1977, Uranus is in Scorpio. You can even go back to 75, 76, right? This is when the technology really takes off like that bullet shot out of that magic moon cannon. It's a big deal. Like technology is a really big deal. You know, it's on like Donkey Kong, especially back in the 70s. We looked at that a couple of weeks ago. You had the Tandy TRS-80, the Apple II, the first nodes on DARPANET, Oracle incorporates, right? So in 1974, the sun, U.S. sun, and 74, 75, the U.S. sun is in, progressed sun, goes from Capricorn into Aquarius. And it's there for 30 years. So we got 84, 94, 2004, 30 years. And that 30-year run is the most technological evolutionary cycle in the history of this country. Because what happens after that is it reaches a peak. Technology reaches a peak and a plateau. So some of those changes, like in 2004, that's when Apple comes out with the iPod. 2004 is, I think it's 2002. It comes out with iTunes and then the iPod. And then the iPod is the precursor to the iPhone. They're already working on the iPhone. So you get the iPhone, I believe, in 2007. So 2 years after this. And that really is like the height. The iPhone is the height of technological development in a physical piece of like technology, right? That's it. I mean, we haven't really gone beyond the iPhone. But if you look at a couple of events in 2005, if I'm not mistaken, the first video was posted on YouTube. Yes. And then I believe Twitter incorporates in 2005. So we're moving into this social realm. Now, the idea for YouTube had begun in those final degrees of Aquarius, you know, when Chad Hurley and his buddies were working in their little office space in San Bruno, California. And in 2005, they have all the infrastructure in place and all the wiring and all the encoding, and they are able to launch their first YouTube video in 2005. So we can see here that with the sun in Pisces, we're coming out of this 30-year cycle of the American progressed sun in Aquarius, which is all about technology in a lot of ways. And if you go through the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, you'll see that there are other things. There's a punk rock, the DIY movement. You have a lot of festivals that occur. You have Live Aid, Farm Aid. Those are, Farm Aid, of course, being American. Live Aid, Bob Geldof. So there's some Aquarian elements that are happening during this time. In America in the 80s, we have, the Coalition of the Willing, 1,000 Points of Light, George Bush, all these nations, that are headed up by Bush going in to get Saddam Hussein. It's a very Aquarian thing. So we can see some of that during this 30-year cycle with the U.S. progressed sun. Now, this is the beginning of a different 30-year cycle. This is a 30-year cycle of Pisces where, we're dealing with things like hardcore drugs, things like fentanyl, OxyContin. That's all part of this progressed sun in Pisces. Victims, martyrs, they're all part of this progressed Piscean tale that's being told and has been told since 2005. So this is where we move into it. We move into the grievance culture with the progressed sun in Pisces, that everybody's got a grievance, and everybody is operating from a place of lack, not from a place of, hey, we can make this. There's some of that in Aquarius. Like, if you have a really good idea, man, you can make it happen. Go rent out a garage space and get some seed money and some funding. Get some investors. That begins to end here. Now, obviously, a lot of the ideas that started with the progressed sun in Aquarius will take shape over the course of the next few years. MySpace is already on the map. Facebook will then essentially supersede MySpace, right? It'll just go in like a Lady Pac-Man and eat MySpace. Twitter will take off. YouTube will take off. So the whole idea of social media and social networks are like the track is being laid, and it will move into play here with the sun being moving into progressed Pisces. But even with those developments, the Piscean story comes into play. Like you get in things like censorship and hate speech, which is very, very subjective. When you deal with Pisces, you're dealing with subjectivity. You're not dealing with objectivity. So that's another downside to these developments. And you can see here that there's this Sun-Uranus square that's taking place, and that's a big square. And Mercury, you can see the final degrees of Mercury in Aquarius as well, and behind the sun. So there is, now that Mercury will move, that'll change. It's retrograde there, isn't it? Yeah. I have to look where it is right now. It may have, sometimes these retrograde planets in the progressed chart, they stay there for a really long fucking time. So we have this square. So technology is going to push people, right? It's going to push people, and it may push people in a bit of an uncomfortable direction. There's a lot of growth with this T square, right? They're both air signs. Not T square, just a square. They're both air signs. So, I mean, to some degree, they'll synergize, but because of the degree, they're in conflict. But there's money to be made, right? There's a lot of money to be made here with Saturn, progressed Saturn in Scorpio. Excuse me, both in trine with Mercury and with Saturn. So whatever's happening, both in terms of things like the internet and technology, there are going to be people that are going to profit off it here with Saturn. It's also, I think, the time where we start to see government get turned into a bit of a cult. We're 4 years out from 9/11. I think Saddam Hussein is on trial during this time. So there's a lot of power that's being accrued during this phase. And progressed Mars in the US chart is still in Libra. So here it's in this T-square with opposition to Venus and Chiron. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, especially as it relates to what happens in 2005. Okay, so I'm setting the stage for you. And we're going to look at two significant events that take place astrologically. Well, one is astrological, the other is, well, I'd say meteorological. Okay, so here we go. Let's get into, where am I going here? Nope, not that. Oh, man. Let's do this. I had all my tabs set up. All right, let's do that. And we'll just use this as a kind of a root. Okay. All right. So this is the timeline for 2005. One of the first things we see here on January 5th is the discovery of Eris. So we're just going to put a bookmark right here. The most massive known dwarf planet in the solar system. We're going to put a bookmark there because this is significant, really significant. All right, so we have Deep Impact. That's launched from Cape Canaveral. Whatever. We've got some the Huygens spacecraft landing on Titan, largest moon in Saturn. George Bush gets his second term. The most intense solar particle event in recorded history is observed. So there's some big changes going on here, like astronomically, astrologically, like this massive solar particle event. And then we have Eris, which we're going to talk about. Now we move into the Kyoto Protocol. Well, what is that? Well, that's the beginning of the Green New Deal and climate change. By the way, with Pisces, everything is emotional and subjective. We have the president of Kyrgyzstan. He's deposed. But that's not really what I'm looking at. We got an earthquake, a couple of big earthquakes here. One just on the heels of a massive solar eclipse, real big solar eclipse. So there's one of them right there, April 8th. April 2nd, just 2 days before the solar eclipse, Pope John Paul II dies. It's kind of a big deal, and it does have an impact in the United States. Of course, with we're moving into this Piscean progress chart of the United States, which is kind of a big deal because now we're going to have to deal with a different pope, right? But that's not just a United States event. That's a global event. But it's interesting that we're moving into this Piscean phase. We're coming out of, and what's interesting about that pope, John Paul II, is that number one, he was really popular. And he was also probably the most televised pope in history. He's a global pope. He really is a global pope. He's got the Pope Mobile. He's videotaped and filmed all over the planet. The Pope prior to him is not as global. It's because technology is like not there. Right? He was Pope for a long time. And 4 million people went to the Vatican. So again, his popularity in this country takes off when all this Aquarian energy with progressed U.S. sun. And then boom, the sun moves into progressed Pisces. He goes, and we have this Benedict who becomes Pope on April 19th, who looks a lot like a Sith Lord. Then we have a big solar eclipse here happening in Aries. And then here's the YouTube event I'm talking about, April 23rd. So we're into Taurus. Me at the zoo, the very first YouTube video. We have another lunar eclipse here. We're going into the nodes in Virgo. This is not really what I'm looking at. Some interesting things that happened during this year. We got a big suicide bombing in London, the July 7th thing. That was a big deal. And then there was a lot of shit that came out of that basically pointed to that's a false flag. They were false flagging that thing. And then right after that, on the 23rd, you got some bombings in Egypt. So this is a pretty intense time in terms of events, whether they're false flags or not. Okay, we're going to keep going here. This is what we're looking at right here. This is, to me, the watershed moment, pun slightly intended, where we can see that the progressed U.S. sun has gone into Pisces. It's Katrina. Katrina makes landfall along the U.S. Gulf Coast, causing severe damage and killing over 1,000 people and dealing with an estimated $108 billion in damage. Now, look, I could do a whole show on Katrina. I'm just showing you that as this mundane marker for the arrival of the progressed U.S. sun. Now, I will talk about Katrina in that context because there's a lot about Katrina that is occluded and occulted, like blowing the levees. They blew the levees. This is where we really get into this first kind of weird illusion around news. Because you hear things early on about it, they're like, what the fuck? Well, I guess 9/11 is kind of like that too, but Katrina's like that. You hear things about Katrina when it's happening that blow your mind. Like, what do you mean they blew the levees? There were reports of like gunfights with U.S. Marshals on these levees down in New Orleans. Like, what is going on there? And then you have this whole strange thing with all these people. They're going down to New Orleans to help. You had fire trucks coming down from Massachusetts and all these other places that were there to go help, right? We're Americans. We're going to go help these people. And what happens? They get turned away. So, nope, sorry. Can't come in. We got it. So FEMA's there on the ground. You remember Michael Brown, who was the head of FEMA, who had no fucking clue about what he was doing? Oh, Brownie's doing a good job. He's doing a good job. Brownie's doing just fine. He's doing just fine. Brownie was somebody who raised Arabian stallions and got that job because he was buddies with George Bush. He didn't know shit about emergencies. Brownie doing just fine. But there's all this confusion. Like, who's in charge? This guy who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, is he in charge? And that's the first time I think we also get in touch with the high strange of Kanye West. Who can forget the moment where they're doing this telethon for Katrina and Kanye West is on there with Michael Myers, and Kanye West basically blurts out that George Bush hates black people. Who can forget that? Like, that's when Kanye West all of a sudden was like, who is this guy? And I knew about him already. It's like, oh, that's interesting. And Mike Myers has disappeared, but Kanye West is still around. But again, it's like he hates black people. It's a Piscean thing. And maybe he did. I don't know. I'm sure that he probably had a lot more fondness for people like Michael Brown. And I'm not talking about the Michael Brown from Missouri. No, his buddy Brownie, different Brown. Anyway, yeah. And then what happens? Well, they got all these people who get blown out of their homes. And where do they go? They go to the Superdome, which is they turn the Superdome into this Piscean, circle of Dante's hell. which is very Piscean. But like the shit that went down in the Superdome was scary. And I'm convinced that they had observers in there, and that was a social experiment, what was going on in the Superdome. They would go there. You know what they would do? They, being like the National Guard, they would go there and they would drop off big cases of water. They would drop off alcohol. They dropped off alcohol. They would drop off some food, and then they'd leave, theoretically. They would leave. But they wouldn't really. They'd have cameras. They'd have observers. They'd watch what was going on. And that place descended into a hell. People got raped. They had no place to go to the bathroom. Like shit's all over the place. Somebody, I think, fell from, it's all the Superdome in Louisiana. Somebody fell from one of the, upper loge areas, right? Up the upper deck. Like they had deaths, they had rapes, they had all kinds of shit going on there. And then finally, they eventually get people out of there. And where do they go? They go to Houston. That's where a lot of people from San Antonio, New Orleans wound up in Texas. They couldn't go back to their homes. By the way, those homes were generational. They were totally generational. So the people that owned those homes, were in those homes, they owned them like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. They wanted them out. They wanted to clear them out. They wanted to get them out of there. They wanted to go in. They wanted to rehab those areas. And that was a good way to get people out of there. Very Piscean, just a big giant wave, flush them out right down the state line. Just flush them all the way to Texas. There's your sun in Pisces progressed with your Katrina moment. That's a big one. Here's another eclipse. We got a big earthquake in Kashmir on the heels of that eclipse. We got the trial of Saddam Hussein on another eclipse. So it seems like these eclipses are linked to these really tectonic kinds of events. We got suicide bombings and it's a mess. Merkel takes office. You got United Nations Climate Change Conference. So a lot of Piscean. It's not just the United States, but the United States, I think, is really the sort of looking for the that's a chalice. Chalice is too good of a word. It's like the incubator. It's this alchemical sort of receptacle, right, for this Piscean soup that the world is going to be ultimately baptized in. But it's not clear, and it's not sacred, divine, or holy water. All right. So this is what I wanted to focus on. I want to focus on Eris. Oh, look, Michael E. Brown. So Michael Brown shows up 3 times. You have Michael Brown, who discovers Eris. You have Michael Brown in the same year, who is the head of FEMA. And then you have Michael Brown, who is the guy who steals his ciggies, whatever that thing is all about. Okay, let's take a look at Eris, because this is important. This is, at least I think it's important. So we start talking about this dwarf planet, Eris. It's just, they begin to kind of spot it prior to 2005. They say it's slightly smaller than Pluto. It's one of these exoplanets. So there are 3 people. There's Mike Brown, old Brownie. So it's discovered on January 5th, 2005. Now they'd taken some photos, I think, and they were like, oh, what's this? So Eris was originally called a different name, and they were thinking of another name to call it. So let's check out what Eris was originally named. Now, apparently Eris has a moon, and it's called Dysnomia. Eris is named after the Greek goddess Eris, a personification of strife and discord. Okay, think about that, because these discoveries are important. Like every time they discover a planet, when they've discovered a planet, that planet seems to have played a role in terms of what happens at a global or collective level. Like it becomes a an archetypal resonator in our story. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Eris is a personification of strife and discord, and we have also Katrina that year, which is chaotic, creates a lot of strife and a lot of discord, from Kanye West saying that George Bush doesn't like black people, or he hates black people, whatever he said. Very uncomfortable. He would later go on to become, I think, a lot more articulate in his own weird way. But that's just setting the table, right? That's just setting the table. We live in a constant state of 24/7 news cycle, strife, and discord. Like once Eris was officially discovered, it became part of our collective narrative. And that's what we've been dealing with. And even Trump, who, is a master disruptor, he is a Discordian. He is like a king of Discordia. We're going to get into some of this discord. It takes us into a really weird place, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so they had to come up with a name. The Greek and Latin oblique stem of the name Arid. That's where we get Eris from. Due to uncertainty over whether the object would be classified as a planet or a minor planet, because different nomenclature procedures apply to these classes of objects, the decision on what to name the object had to wait until after August 24th, 2006, IAU ruling. For a time, the object became known to the wider public as Xena. Remember the warrior princess? Like that's what Eris's name was for a little while. It was Xena. But that's not Discordian enough. Not enough strife was associated with Xena. But you can kind of see here, right? They're going after a very strong Aries-like feminine figure, which obviously plays a pretty significant role moving forward. All right, so Xena may be a little too, I don't know, justice-oriented, maybe a little too white, right? Because we know Lucy Lawless is Xena. We have a picture of her mind in Xena. She's not Eris. She's not Discordian. All right, so let's keep going here. For a time, the object became known to the wider public as Xena. Xena was an informal name used internally by the Discovery team, inspired by the title character of the television series Xena Warrior Princess. The Discovery team had reportedly saved the nickname Xena for the first body they discovered that was larger than Pluto, according to Brown. We chose it since it started with an X, Planet X. It sounds mythological. And we've been working to get more female deities out there. Sedna. Also at the time, the TV show was still on TV, which shows you how long we've been searching. Brown said in an interview the naming process was stalled. One reporter, Ken Chang, called me up from the New York Times, who happened to be a friend of mine from college, and asked me, what's the name you guys proposed? And I said, well, I'm not going to tell. And he said, well, what do you guys call it when you're just talking amongst yourselves? As far as I remember, this was the only time I told anybody in the press. And then it got everywhere, which I only sort of felt bad about. I kind of liked the name. According to science writer Govert Schilling, Brown initially wanted to call the object Lila, after a concept in Hindu mythology that described the cosmos as the outcome of a game played by Brahman. The name could be pronounced like Lila, the name of Brown's newborn daughter. Hey, you get a twofer there. You get this Hindu mythological reference, and you get to name an exoplanet after your daughter. Not bad. Brown was mindful of not making his name public before it had been officially accepted. He had done so with Sedna the year previously, have been heavily criticized. However, no objection was raised to the Sedna name other than the breach of protocol. And after no competing names were suggested for Sedna, he listed the address of his personal webpage announcing the discovery as /-M Brown /Planetilia or Planet Lila. And in the chaos following the controversy over the discovery of Haumea, forgot to change it. Rather than needlessly anger more of his fellow astronomers, he simply said that the webpage had been named for his daughter and dropped Lila for consideration. He got guilted. He got shamed out of potentially naming that after his daughter. This guy has no sack. Come on, dude. Fight for your daughter's name. Brown had also speculated that Persephone, the wife of the god Pluto, would be a good name for the object. The name had been used several times in science fiction and was popular with the public, having handily won a poll conducted by New Scientist magazine. Xena, despite only being a nickname, came fourth. The choice was not possible once the object was classified as a dwarf and thus a minor planet, because there was already a minor planet with that name, 399 Persephone. The discovery team proposed Eris on September 6, 2006. On September 13, 2006, this was accepted as the official name by the IAU. I should do a chart for that. I'll do it next week, if I can. We'll see about next week. Brown decided that because the object had been considered a planet for so long, it deserved a name from Greek or Roman mythology, like other planets. The asteroids had taken the vast majority of Greco-Roman names. Eris, whom Brown described as his favorite goddess, have fortunately escaped inclusion. Eris caused strife and discord, causing quarrels among people, said Brown in 2006. And that's what this one has done too. So it caused a degree of strife and quarrel amongst the people that wanted to name it. So therefore, it was a perfect candidate for being named Eris. There are two competing symbols in use for Eris by the astrological community: a Discordian symbol and a symbol representing that of Mars, but with the arrow pointing downward. The former has appeared in publications by NASA. Some Polish astrologers have identified Eris with the fictitious trans-Plutonian planet Prosperina, and so use Prosperina's astrological symbol, which is an inverted Venus, essentially a globus cruciger. This is what they use, by the way. You see a lot of that in Tartarian sort of paintings, right? You see that symbol, right? You have these characters who like have the globus in one hand, and they have this very interesting staff with some antiquitech on the other hand. So it's kind of an interesting symbol. I think this one is actually what they use. So we have this exoplanet that's introduced in 2005, right as the United States progressed sun goes into Pisces, which is a fairly chaotic sign. Even though Aquarius can be Uranian and kind of radical or revolutionary, it's a fixed sign. Pisces is mutable and contains every other sign inside of it. Did you get a mouse? Go find a mouse. All right, so let's talk about Discord, because ever since they have discovered this thing, it's been fucking Discordian. Way Discordian. Okay, so why don't we go into the Goddess of Strife. So this is Eris in mythology. Remember Discord. We have the Discord servers playing an interesting role in mixing things up. Okay. Jasper's crazy right now. In Hesiod's theogony, Eris, the daughter of night, is less kindly spoken of as she brings forth other personifications as her children. And hateful Eris bore painful Ponos, hardship, Lethe, forgetfulness, and Limos, starvation, and the tearful Algea, pains, Hysimni, battles, Mechai, war, Phonai, murders, and Androtacasi, I'm sorry, Androctasiae, it's a new one for you, manslaughters, Nakia, quarrels, Sudia, lies, Logoi, stories, and Philogai, disputes, dysnomia, misrule, and Ate, ruin, near one another, and Horkos, oath, who most afflicts men on earth, than willing swears a false oath. Wow. So this is what Eris brings, right? These are the children of Eris. And are these not some of the conditions that have accelerated since the year 2000? Clearly since the year 2005. Starvation, forgetfulness, hardship, battles, wars. Since 2005, we've been involved in the ongoing conflagration in Afghanistan. Right? There's Iraq. We've got Libya and Syria to look forward to with Obama. Surging in Iraq. We have Yemen. Like, all these things are happening. We've got disputes. We've got misrule. God, I mean, this is the the progeny of Eris and the discord. So we need to find another exoplanet here, which will come in due time, I'm sure. Eris was Typhon's escort. Strife was Typhon's escort in the melee. Nike victory led Zeus into battle. So there's this whole thing around Discordianism that is related to Eris. Eris has been adopted as the patron deity of the modern Discordian religion. Now they say that Discordianism is a religion, but it's also so Discordian that it's not a religion. We're talking about Discordianism and the Church of the Subgenius. All right, let's read about this. Here's where it gets really trippy. Eris has been adopted as the patron deity of the modern Discordian religion, which was begun in the late 1950s by Gregory Hill and Carrie Wendell Thornley under the pen names of Malacalypse the Younger and Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst. The Discordian version of Eris is considerably lighter in comparison to the rather malevolent Greco-Roman original, where she is depicted as a positive, albeit mischievous force of creative creation. Principia Discordia, the first holy book of Discordianism, states, one day Maltu consulted his pineal gland and asked Eris if she really created all those terrible things. She told him that she had always liked the old Greeks, but that they cannot be trusted with historic matters. They were, she added, victims of indigestion, you know. Suffice it to say that Eris is not hateful or malicious, but she is mischievous and does get a little bitchy at times. So this whole thing with Eris and Discordia and the Discordians is very interesting. So I'm going to take you into the Discordian religion. Let me see if I can find it. God, I could do a whole show on this stuff right here. Okay. So Discordianism, or a philosophy paradigm centered on Eris, aka Discordia, the goddess of chaos. Discordianism uses archetypes or ideals associated with her. It was founded after the 1963 publication of its holy book, the Principia Discordia, written by Greg Hill with Carrie Wendell Thornley. The religion has been likened to Zen based on similarities with absurdist interpretations of the Rinzai school, as well as Taoist philosophy. Discordianism is centered on the idea that both order and disorder are illusions imposed on the universe by the human nervous system, that neither of these illusions of apparent order and disorder are any more accurate or objectively true than the other. That's kind of an interesting idea, especially when we're looking at the Discordian nature of our times. So when we look at this whole idea of the left-right paradigm and what's going on in Ukraine or Russia, is it really all that tangible? Can we wrap our arms around it? Can we wrap our head around it? And do we want to be pushed into the yellow and blue side, or we want to be pushed into the red, white, and blue side, or do we want to be pushed into the red side, right? Discordianism would tend to look at this from a more objective perspective and see this as some kind of play being run out before our eyes, and one that could spark some degree of creativity. Memes come out of Discordia. Memes are a Discordian exercise to have commentary on the chaotic system that we're in without them becoming necessarily arbiters of truth. So the mimetic response to the world that we live in is a part of this Discordian working out of these principles or these energies. Kek is a Discordian manifestation, the frog god, right? He is a Discordian manifestation of this energy, which is chaotic. And Trump comes out of that, right? All these things like Kek, the frog god, and memes, and memery, they all sort of arrive when Trump, the chief Discordian architect, comes onto the scene. Okay. So this goes fairly, there's a lot of ground to cover here. What I really want to go into is the relationship between these two characters, Mal Calypso Younger and Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst. So these two guys know each other from high school, and they're the two that create this kind of postmodern, prankster-esque world of Discordia and Discordianism, and their patron saint being Eris. Let's get into him for a minute, because this is where it gets really weird. He passed away in 1998. I think the other guy's still alive. So it gets really weird. Let me see. When Greg Hill. Okay. I think he passed away too. All right, here we go. He's an Aries, born April 17th, 1938, dies November 28th, 1998. Was an American author. He's known as the co-founder, along with childhood friend Greg Hill, of Discordianism, in which context he is usually known as Omar Khayyam Ravenhurst, or simply Lord Omar. He and Hill authored the religion's text Principia Discordia, or How I Found Goddess and What I Did to Her When I Found Her. Thornley was also known for his 1962 manuscript, The Idle Warriors, which is based on his activities of his acquaintance Lee Harvey Oswald prior to the 1963 assassination of John F. Kennedy. This guy was buddies with Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm telling you, it gets fucking weird here. Raised Mormon, that should be a clue. In adulthood, Carey shifted his ideological focus frequently in rivalry with any serious counterculture figure of the 1960s. Among the subjects he closely scrutinized throughout his life were atheism, anarchism, objectivism, autarkism. He attended Robert LaFay's Freedom School, neo-paganism, Karista Buddhism, and the mimetic inheritor of Discordianism, the Church of the Subgenius. So he and Malcalypse are written about in the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson. So he's got this, he looks like one of these freaky Southern Californian dudes who's hanging around the Laurel Canyon. He's totally hanging around the Laurel Canyon. He's got that look. Having already been a U.S. Marine Corps reservist for about 2 years, Thornley had been summoned to active duty in 1958 at age 20, soon after completing his freshman year at the University of Southern California. According to Principia Discordia, it was around this time that he and Greg Hill, alias Malacalypse the Younger, or Mal II, shared their first eristic vision in a bowling alley in their hometown of Whittier, California, which is where Richard Nixon is from. By the way, this is also right around the same area that, oh God, I'm spacing out now. It's right around the same area where L. Ron Hubbard it meets, JPL guy. Sorry. It's late Sunday here. JPL guy. And they start their own, basically their own religion with the Babylon working, right? Right around the same time, same area. This is all sort of taking place. Southern California, wouldn't you know it? In early 1959, Thornley served for a short time in the same radar operator unit as Lee Harvey Oswald at MCAS El Toro in Santa Ana. Both men shared a common interest in society, culture, literature, and politics. And whenever duty placed them together, had discussed such topics as George Orwell's famous novel, 1984, and the philosophy of Marxism, particularly Oswald's interest in the latter. While aboard a troop ship returning to the United States from tour duty in Japan, sometime after the two men parted ways as a result of a routine reassignment, Thornley read of Oswald's return in autumn of 1959 and defection to the Soviet Union, the U.S. military paper Stars and Stripes. In 1962, Thornley completed The Idle Warriors, which has the historical distinction being the only book written about Lee Harvey Oswald before Kennedy's assassination in 1963. Due to the serendipitous nature of Thornley's choice of literary subject matter, he was called to testify before the Warren Commission in Washington, D.C. on May 18, 1964. The commission subpoenaed a copy of the manuscript and stored it in the National Archives, and the book remained unpublished until 1991. In 1965, Thornley published another book titled Oswald, generally defending the Oswald as lone assassin conclusion by the Warren Commission. Oh, okay. So he goes down this weird, like his life takes on this Discordian relationship with the Kennedy assassination and Lee Harvey Oswald and Jim Garrison. It gets bizarre, right? Like Garrison is trying the case. And then he charged Thornley with perjury because Thornley was supposed to show up. Like he becomes this Discordian figure in the whole JFK assassination. And then Garrison moves on from the case. And his successor is Harry Connick fucking Sr., like the guy who's the father of the piano player. Harry Connick Jr.'s father takes over for Jim Garrison, who is trying to untangle the knots for the Kennedy assassination. This thing gets just bizarre, totally bizarre. So Kerry Wendell Thornley, born on April 17th, that puts his son, right at like 28, let's see, 26, I think, 26 Aries. So his natal sun is conjunct Eris. Conjunct Eris. I think I have Eris on the chart. Yeah, put it in there. Where's Aries? Okay, where's that Eris? Give me a second here. That's Emmett Till. Yep, here it is right here. Okay. So Eris is at 20 Aries, which is where I thought it was. Let me just bring it up. So you can see Eris, that's 20 degrees. So Thornley being born, what is it, on the 17th of April? That's going to put him, what, about 25, probably around 25, 26 Aries. So his sun is conjunct Eris. Isn't that interesting? He's got an Eris sun conjunction. Who knows? He might even have a Venus conjunction with Eris. I haven't seen his chart. But there's the true node right there in Aries, right? So we have Aries and Eris. This is October 11th, 2005, right there. Mm-hmm. That's what was happening. So the nodes are in opposition. And I would assume, I'd have to go back and look. Where are the nodes? I think they might be in Taurus. Let me just go back and check here. Hold on. Yeah, I think they were close to, so the true node, I think, was close to Eris when they discovered Eris. And his sun is conjunct Eris. So when you dive into that guy's life, it gets really chaotic, especially with the relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald, especially with the relationship with the Warren Committee. Like I fucking knew Lee Harvey Oswald before he was Lee Harvey Oswald. Amazing. Anyway, we can see that Eris, like everything that's happened post Katrina, and with that just deluge, that focused deluge, and the misinformation, and people being washed out of their generational homes in New Orleans, and the Superdome as a Dante-esque realm of hell, in this kind of Piscean hybrid of an emergency shelter, prison, a social experiment, a makeshift hospital, a whorehouse, a drug den. It was all there. Like the Superdome had metastasized into this, this Piscean blister, that was just, erupting, out of the sort of the chaos, the Discordian chaos that was brought forth by Katrina. Katrina, again, being a feminine name, right? I think they moved on to, make these storms male names just because they couldn't have all these feminine names take the heat. But it kind of fits it's not clearly an offspring of Eris, but it could be. It could be a cousin of some of those lesser, darker deities that were hatched by Eris. And we've been kind of living in the Eris portal since then. Not kind of, I think we have been. Anyway, an interesting dive here. And I think the Discordian component is something maybe to play with a little bit. Try not to take things as seriously. Because what happens, we get into this polarized, and I'm not here to pitch for, becoming a member of the Church of the Subgenius, because there's some pretty bizarre and very dark Discordian characters, but maybe a little Discordian savvy might help you get through this period of time. Think about it. All right. There was one other chart I wanted to bring up before we leave tonight. And it has to do with Emmett Till's chart. This is just one of those moments in astrology where I just shake my head and go, yeah. So most of you know who Emmett Till was. If you don't know who he was a young man who got into a flirtatious situation. He was black. She was white. The locals didn't like it. And they tied him up and dragged him around with a car, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess it was like an auto lynching. Anyway, it was terrible, really terrible. And they've been trying to get this Emmett Till anti-lynching bill passed. And it's really strange because you had Jussie Smollett, who got convicted the other day, right? It's like, okay, Jussie, see ya. You're a narcissistic asshole who can't admit that you're a fucking liar. So you got 150 days in jail, and some of that's in solitary confinement. Jussie Smollett is freaked out. I can tell that right now. That guy was screaming that he's not suicidal. And the reason he's screaming that is because he was put up to do what he did. I went through that like the same week it happened. And I looked at Kamala Harris's chart. I looked at Cory Booker's chart. I looked at Michelle Obama's chart. I think I looked at Kim Fox's chart. Guilty, 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 guilty. These are the people that put him up to it. I'm telling you right now. Because they were trying to get the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill passed. And they needed Juicy, who had gone down to the subway and came home, told his tale to the cop. He had his little fucking rope around his neck still, just so he could shut him. He's nuts. He's totally nuts. And here we go. This is Emmett Till. He's got Saturn in Taurus, conjunct Algol. How about that? There's the transiting true node right there. So we had the Emmett Till lynching, anti-lynching bill. We had Juicy Smollett, who wound up becoming convicted for faking a hate crime, going to jail. And by the way, I think he has Venus in Taurus, conjunct Algol. I think he better be, Jussie Smollett better be a little nervous. You better be a little bit nervous. So again, I think it's interesting. You know, to me, this really fleshes out astrology, you know, in the mundane world. Because if this is not mundane, let's say it's sidereal, Saturn wouldn't be here at this degree. You'd back Saturn up, 15 degrees? It'd be down here. It wouldn't be conjunct Algol. He wouldn't be known for being this young guy who, you know, suffered this terrible crime, having to do with, you know, having this noose wrapped around his neck and being dragged around by a car. Horrible. And it's conjunct Algol. And the true node is there, and we get the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill passed. I'm not sure why. And Emmett Till has been honored on a number of occasions. And I'm not here to say, hey, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal. I mean, it's a horrible story. But here we are, fairly long time after the fact. I think it happened in the 50s. It's born in Chicago. I think it happened in Texas. And it's finally getting resolved. True node, conjunct Algol, conjunct Saturn. And then Juicy, who was trying to live out his Emmett Till moment, going to jail. Weird. Astrology's fucking weird. But it's interesting too. And it's very Discordian. So there you go. All right. I wanted to bring that up only because the arithmetic works. Okay. Thanks for being here. And I'm not sure I'll be here on Sunday because I'll be in transit. If I can get back on Sunday, I'll do a show. And if I do a show, well, I'll bring my my friend. I guess what would I call Stacy? My human design fixer. She's my human design fixer. We'll bring Stacy on, see if she'll talk some human design. So she'll talk about it. Maybe we get into a philosophical discussion about human design and astrology. She's a 2-4 projector like me. So, we might have a few interesting things to say about it. All right. Thank you for being here. Long show. Let's see. We went about 3 hours tonight, just about, with a little bit of a break here and our little intermission with our silent movie with the Man in the Moon. Let me get back into chat, and I'm sure a lot of you have gone to bed by now, and some of you might still be there. So I'm just going to say goodnight. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to step in what's possible. For myself and Jasper and Rosie, take good care. Don't forget, I'm going to leave the link for Leon's fundraiser and the ability to work with him as a partner, right? It's a nice hybrid model. Like, he's looking to get out of Dodge and do a reset with his life. And he's also looking to, build something new as well. So it's pretty cool, I think. So I'll leave that in the notes here in the show. All right. Take care.